How's it going, everybody? Welcome to LUMIX Live this week. Hopefully you all have been having a great day or past week. Yeah, we're going to have a fun conversation today, I think. Obviously, there is a lot of conversations going online right now all about OpenGate and its benefits or perceived benefits, different opinions, different use cases. So obviously, this is what everyone is talking about right now, so let's talk about it right here. One of the originators of OpenGate capabilities in mirrorless products and modern mirrorless products. So we have a lot of history within this, kind of capability and recording functionality. And we've had a lot of experience talking with a lot of different creators and all that kind of stuff and like all the kind of capabilities and all that kind of stuff. So let's just chat. Let's actually kind of like hopefully demystify or kind of, come from a point of understanding what its capabilities are, what it can offer you, how, for some use cases, you have to remember, some people may not have experiences with shooting in OpenGate, so they may not ever actually understand its benefits for their use cases. One thing that I am going to request everybody in the chat here, be civil. Be civil in the conversation about it. Be, upright with commentary. If someone doesn't understand it or someone doesn't like using it or they don't see a value in it for their work, that's cool. There's a lot of use cases out there where, maybe OpenGate's not necessarily something someone's going to care about. Maybe there's other things in, the cameras or the capabilities or the type of work that they do or the hobby that they love. It doesn't take away whether or not you've got this product and this capability or whether it doesn't, whether it's important to that person that it's this great feature. Just keep that at a bare level, okay? I want everyone to, be open, share your opinions about it, chat about all that stuff in the comment section, in the chat here as well. But one thing that, like I said, we will not tolerate is personal attacks, bringing people's names into stuff like that. Look, everyone's got perspectives. Everyone's got their own opinions out there. We're allowed to have our own opinions. What I want to do today is go through from a factual perspective. What is OpenGate? How does it work? What do we do with our cameras to support creating in that manner? Some of the real-world functionalities where it could be beneficial, depending on your use case. Some of the areas where I think people may get a little too sensationalized with what OpenGate brings you. And also be able to show you the tools in how it can make certain types of capture easier, better, put it into relative perspective to some other, kind of categories. As someone who comes from the photographic background, I am a photographer first and foremost. OpenGate video means something completely different to someone like me than maybe some of you that come from video content creation, especially if you've come from video content creation in a more modern era where 16:9 is the normal accepted, kind of format. So all of that out of the way, before we actually dive into all of that conversation, I want to remind those of you in the US about LUMIX Pro services. If you've purchased a LUMIX camera, if you got one over the holidays, if you're still waiting and, maybe you just need a little bit of an extra, like, maybe I should pick that lens up or, whatever. You can register your equipment that you've purchased new for LUMIX Pro service in the US. We've got the red tier and the platinum tier in the US. Red is free. You get that just by purchasing the camera. Register, sign up, use the QR code below. You get a 3-year added manufacturer warranty on top of your purchase. You also get into the program, so if you ever need tech support or product support, all that kind of stuff, you've got access to an entire program for that. So you don't have to go through the general Panasonic service and support system in the US. For those of you outside of the United States, LUMIX Pro service may be available in some regions. It's not available in other regions, but our service and support system does exist in all of the different areas. You have access to a program wherever you are. If you're someone in the US that prefers to have higher level of service and support, You can also take advantage of the Platinum tier. The Platinum tier is a paid level service that does get you your added 3-year manufacturer warranty on new purchases. But on top of that, you get 2-day repairs with next day shipping both ways. You get 20% off out of warranty service and support. So that means if you've got, a problem, you're working on a job or you're on a trip and you drop the camera, you can get that corrected at a little bit less out of pockets and stuff like that. It's not warranty covered. But you also get annual sensor cleanings, lens calibration, firmware updates, like kind of all the maintenance stuff that, if you just would rather have a service and support team handle all of that for you, you've got access to that program. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, I encourage you to follow the QR code right below. Or go to lumix-pro.us, links down in the description, so you can get yourself registered on that program. It's kind of not smart to not at least take advantage of the free service with Red for your purchase. I do also want to give a heads up. If you do hear a dog barking, I apologize. I am watching a friend's dog, and sometimes the wind makes her go a little barky. So, all right. Let's see. There's been a lot of chat and commentary. As a reminder, if you are new to LUMIX Live, or if you've been here and maybe just want a little fresh reminder, if it's something you want me to see and respond to, tag at LUMIX USA, as you can see a couple people doing. It just gives me a little flag on my side so I can see it. And I don't run this stream in the ultra low latency, so I will be behind in some of the questions. But let's jump right up and see some of these questions. So, Piku, just keep knocking on the same door. OpenGate 5.1K 60p AF subject detection with an external monitor. We continue to ask the engineers if that's something possible. I don't know if it's going to be something possible. Same with the slow and quick versus normal video mode question there. We do keep asking. I haven't got any kind of updates from the teams there. Any chance of MP4 Lite 60 FPS? I have asked for that one actually very specifically. I've also asked for a 24 frame. I would love to see both of those options. I think MP4 Lite is a great way, since we're talking about OpenGate, it's a great way to get into being able to capture in a 3:2 ratio without necessarily the heavyweight larger files or the higher resolution if it's not something that you need for a certain kind of job or output. But yeah, as of right now, it is that the 2997 or 30 frames per second. If that ever changes, obviously we'll talk about it here. Any chance of getting direct Desqueeze in LUMIX Flow? That is something, again, there's going to be probably a lot of responses like, yes, I've asked that kind of stuff. We've proposed those questions to the engineering teams. Don't really have any kind of updates there, as far as that goes. Menu redesign? No, probably not going to do a menu redesign anytime soon. What I will say, so this is from All International. Yes, there are like 19 pages of recording modes available on some of our cameras, especially on the newer ones. One of the things that we do have in the camera for you, though, is we do have the ability that when you go into your video recording options here, so I'm on an S1R Mark II right now. If I go in here, I have a display filtering option. So I can come in and see, like, all right, I've got 74 options. That's 13 pages of recording options in the S1R Mark II. If I know there are only certain options that I need to be able to record to, well, I have the capabilities to come in and hit display filtering, say like, hey, I want to be able to pull out my, in this case, let's say 6.4K 3:2 ratios. I can hit display and I can look at the two different options here. So 24 or 30 frames per second, because I have the DR boost DR expansion mode on. Let me turn that off so all of the menu options show here. So let's turn this off. Let's go back in to the menus here and let's filter that out again. So let's go to the 6.4K. in this particular camera. I can come in and say, hey, you know, I want a 30 frame or a 24 frame option. So I want to take this 30 frame option and I want to make this easily accessible because, you know, this is a mode that I'm going to use. I'm going to be needing for, you know, my type of shooting. I can click the Q menu button, add it to my list. I can come in, say, hey, you know, I need a pretty typical 4K 16:9. I want a 60 frames per second option. I want to add that in as well. I want to add a 4K 120 option. And then let's add the big one on this camera, the 8.1K 3x2. Let's add that one in as well. What this allows me to do now is have a my rec quality list. So I can click into this and only see the ones that I know I need for my particular type of shooting. So I don't have to go through that 19 pages or 13 pages, whatever it is on the camera. We've had this for a while, so you've got it in a number of different cameras throughout our lineup. But this can be a good way to simplify the stuff down, find the options that you need, because it's fully filterable. So hopefully that helps, get you a little bit, you know, kind of better use of what recording modes you want to take advantage of for it. How's it going, Arts Vision? When recording 4K 120 in bad lighting, lens is already wide open to f4, shutter speed is slowest to 1/125th. Should I record ISO 800 with 2 stops, underexpose, and fix and post, or ISO 3200? Personally, I would just shoot at the higher ISO. It's better to shoot overexposed footage or properly exposed footage than to shoot underexposed. Underexposed and lifting shadow means you're introducing a ton of noise. Overexposed, even if it's a noisier image, when you bring the highlights and the tones back, you end up crushing some of that noise down into the shadow, which is ultimately going to give you a cleaner looking image. All right, so let's talk about OpenGate and general kind of, well, let's start with misconceptions. There's a lot out there that will say, you know, OpenGate recording or full area recording, whatever you want to call it, is one of those things that is a overblown, or it is not a critical feature of a product, or we've made, the best one I've seen is, you know, we've made do with 16:9 recording for years. Why is this now all of a sudden an important thing? In many cases, if we look at, you know, the type of content that we like to produce or that we like to provide, you know, out there, we have to make compromises somewhere. If I'm going to be shooting for myself, and I'm not 100% sure where I'm going to want this, I like having things that, you know, if I want to shoot 16:9 for, say, a training video that I'm doing for our team or our staff or our store staff, yeah, I'm going to, you know, think primarily, I need to shoot this in 16:9 because that's where 90% of those people are going to view it. But now that a lot of use cases and a lot of, you know, staff and for training content and stuff like that, a lot of it ends up getting viewed on our phones. More often than not, people are going to take their phones and they're going to hold it vertically. So, okay, I could just record it twice. I could do one take, do my 16:9. I can then rotate the camera vertically. Cool, I can do another take. Problem one occurs here. One, if you're trying to do consistency, so like, I don't know about you, but even if I have a script to read off of, they're gonna be different each time I read them. I'm pretty terrible at reading off a script. So the content that's said or spoken about, it means now, you know, if I got a perfectly good 16:9 take, awesome, great, I got my 16:9, this is cool. Now I have to do that again. I have to be able to hit cues right. I have to make sure that my timing is the same or relatively the same. I have to make sure that I'm saying the exact same messaging, at least close enough that they are the same, you know, intonation in my voice or the same emphasis on what I'm trying to get across. That means that, you know, if I don't get it right in the first take on a 9x16, then, well, I got to do it again. And if I don't get it right on that take, I got to do it again. All the same stuff that I'd have to do for 16:9 capture. So I shoot, say, a 16:9 training video, I get maybe 5 takes, and then I'm good to go. I've got everything that I need. I can cut it. I can do, unless I do it in one perfect take, great. But that's 5, times. If it's a 10-minute long video, that's 5 takes of different pieces at, 10 minutes each. So that's 50 minutes worth of time that had to be spent on that 16:9. Now I'd have to go in and say, well, I also need a vertical because this particular customer of mine wants a vertical version of it because they want to be able to send it and apply it into a platform that their associates are more commonly going to actually watch for some content. Well, great. I have an option. I can crop it vertically. Okay. But now I've got a weird thing of, I like the way my office looks. I have a very specific setup that I want. I can't back the camera up more. I can back up, but then my background changes. So I'm just going to rotate the camera vertically. Cool. Well, that's 5 potential more takes at 10 minutes apiece. That's another hour of my time gone just for the 2. And then I have to go into the edit, and then I have, so on and so forth. You see how this all of a sudden becomes a ton of time, becomes a ton of output. And I'm talking about this in a professional sense. So, looking at it from what makes the most sense, well, if I was able to record it all at once in a larger format with enough resolution, I would then just be able to record it once, bring it into my editor, and just cut out the 2 clips that I need. Cut out a vertical, cut out a horizontal. I don't have to change my framing because I've got enough headroom. There's another word that gets, used a lot is shoot with headroom. That's a common point. You always want to shoot with headroom, even in 16:9. But now I have that ability that instead of cropping here, I'm cropping here. It's not big, but it's enough that my shoulders look right. I don't look awkwardly cut off. But more importantly, the messaging, the style, the background look, the spacing for things like headroom. You'd be surprised how much better OpenGate works for headroom. Because now I've got, if I need advertisements put in, or I need text, or I want to put a graphic somewhere, I have space to move the graphic. Where if I'm in 16:9 like this, and I have framed it where, okay, I know for 16:9 I may have content on, left or right of me, I have nothing up here. If I crop this vertically for 9:16 delivery, I've got nothing. I've got nowhere else to put text or graphics or something like that. They're now going to be on top of me, which may not be what you want to do. So OpenGate has its functionality there. It makes things in a professional sense very straightforward, much easier to do. And in a professional's view, where delivery is an important component, whether your clients know what they want or not, you want to be as efficient as you can, because the more time you spend on it means the less your hourly rate or whatever, the less value that becomes. Because now if I'm getting, say, $200 an hour, $125 an hour, if I'm getting that, and I have to spend 6 hours of my time on this project because I have to shoot it twice, do 2 full edits of it, all that stuff, versus I can spend 3 hours, shoot it once, get the edit done, and just export out both versions, I now just doubled what my hourly rate is worth to me in time. So that's where I think some of the disconnect comes in. In a more professional environment, you can quantify its benefits, why it can make a better solution for your use case. Often, I also hear, well, an average person's never really going to care about this. The social media creator, the TikToker, like, we talk down on people that are making a living or that enjoy sharing content on TikTok or social media in general. And I'll be right up on this one. I think that's a pretty elitist perspective. They're creating content. They're out there doing things that they're passionate about. If there's anything, we should actually take some lessons from that side of the world and be like, well, they're enjoying what they're doing, or at least they appear that they're enjoying what they're doing. We should also strive to have that. What we have seen is that the ability to capture in a format that allows flexibility in post is just as important in a much more casual side of the business than it ever has been. People want more options. They want the ability to say, hey, I want to put this online. I want to, share this to my YouTube that I'm trying to start, or I want to be able to share this to my social media, but you want to have the best options available to you. Notice something that I haven't said yet in most of this conversation. I think I've only said it maybe once or twice, and that's resolution. Yes, social media is typically going to crush resolution down to 1080p, 720p, whatever resolution you want there. Of course, we all know that. That's a common thing. But I would throw back to those that argue about OpenGate and social media and saying, well, you don't need it, you have more than enough resolution, or that try to have the resolution conversation. Why do we need 4K then? Why do we need 60 frames per second? The vast majority of people view content on a 30 frame or a 24 frame, because in the US we love 24 frame as cinematic. Sure, we can go down and say, well, you can take 60 and slow it down. That's fine. You've got slow motion. There's some pretty cool tools and software for that, even at 24 frame. But resolution-wise, we already know the answer. We like more resolution. We want more detail. We want the ability to crop. You want to be able to tweak that image. No, if I was off to the side a little bit, I want to be able to reframe this and keep my 4K. Or if I know my client wants 1080, I want better looking 1080 than just 1080 out of the camera. Maybe I want to be able to do multiple shots. Maybe I want to have a guest here and I can shoot it in 4K, or I can shoot it in 8K, and then I can just punch in and I got a 1080 here, a 1080 here, a 1080 there. It's all about efficiencies and flexibility. What can the tool offer you that maybe you can take advantage of now? Maybe you don't see a need for it now, but maybe in a couple of years where your aspirational points are, you've got benefits for it. You've got the capability to say, hey, maybe I don't have to go buy that brand new camera. Maybe I've got the camera now that is going to tide me for a couple of years, because I'm not chasing resolution. I'm not chasing the next best thing. And coming from someone whose job depends on people buying our products, you may think I'm crazy for saying that. But this is where things like lenses and optics and accessories and stuff like that come maybe a little bit more into play. If you have never shot with an OpenGate option, you are in a position where you may not ever see that benefit. Before I go further into a tangent, let me look at some of the questions, because I just realized I went on a huge rant about this kind of stuff. But I know that there's a lot of commentary, and I did see Cam is in here. Hi, Cam. Your video last night actually was part of the kind of inspiration of why I wanted to talk about this more today. Usually I don't like jumping right on the fact of like, hey, everyone's talking about a certain topic. Usually I try to give it a little time, but your video last night was, I think, spot on for some of the information that we're trying to share. If you haven't seen Cam's videos, go watch Cam's commentary from last night about it. So let's see here. Okay, so we did that one. According to someone, 4.3 OpenGate makes more sense. Can we expect a full frame sized 4x3 or square sensor someday? So we've talked about square sensors a couple streams ago. You're probably never going to see a square sensor in a mainstream product unless another industry that requires image sensors of this size decides that they want to do it. We think there's benefits for it, as in like creatives, but the truth is a lot of times it's more down to manufacturing, yields of sensor manufacturing, what the waste or the loss is per wafer, all those kinds of things, whether or not a company is even going to endeavor down into developing or designing it, if there's a legitimate benefit to it. You're probably never going to see that. However, with the S1 Mark II, we do have a 4x3 OpenGate option, or a 4x3 in a full sensor height. One of the things to remember is OpenGate does not refer to a resolution or an aspect ratio necessarily. OpenGate is a term that just indicates I'm using the full image area that's available to me. So in a 4x3 censored camera like our GH7 and the Micro Four Thirds line, OpenGate is a 4x3 ratio. In traditional full frame 35mm cameras, it's 3x2 aspect ratio. In APS-C cameras, it's a 3:2 ratio as well. It's just using the full sensor height and width. The term open gate actually is a very, very, very old term from very old cinema. Literally, you would clear the gate, which was the area, you know, your film's here, your rotating shutter is here, which is where shutter angle comes from. And then you would also be able to mask out and say, hey, I want to be shooting 16:9 or 4:3, whatever it was, and you would mask the area. So this isn't a new thing in the imaging industry. It's just new in modern era. Where was I going with that? Question was, will we ever see a full-size 4:3? So you do have a full-sized, full sensor height, 3:2 ratio sensor in a 4:3 cut in the S1 Mark II. That does have 4:3 aspect ratio, so if you are someone who is using anamorphic, and we haven't even gotten to that part yet, if you are someone that uses anamorphic and you prefer the 4:3 ratio, well, you've got that aspect ratio. Something to keep in mind about anamorphic lenses, though, is that if you do a search for anamorphic lenses, the vast majority of them on the market are Super 35. That are going to be something that most of us are probably going to be able to afford. More and more recently, we are starting to see full frame anamorphic, or lenses that are anamorphic that are designed to cover a 35mm sensor, so 3:2 aspect ratio. We have things like Suray, who just came out with theirs. I think they're the only ones that have anything out on market right now. So you have an option. I forget what their squeeze ratio is. I think it's a 1.6. Or no, they're a 1.33. So you've got those. And there's benefits, there's downsides. You take your pick on what you want to go for anamorphic. I would encourage you to go watch Cam Mackey's video about that. I swear I'm not trying to boost Cam's ego. It's just I see him in the chat and I know that he does a lot of videos on anamorphic. The 4:3 ratio can be advantageous for certain types of capture. The 3:2 can be just as advantageous in certain options. It's not a myopic view when it comes to how you can use OpenGate for its different outputs. So yeah, 4:3. S1 Mark II has a 4:3 aspect ratio mode that does use the full sensor height, so you can work with it that way. Actually, I think Cam actually did a video showing the aspect ratios, I think. If not, maybe Cam will message me and say, like, hey, I didn't do that. But if you did, cool. All right. Other questions. Is it possible to get Desqueeze through HDMI as an update? I'm not sure. That's something that we have asked about, but I don't know if there are technical limitations or if there are communication limitations. Anything over HDMI, you have to remember, HDMI as a communication has a standard, and there are certain things that are allowed, certain things that aren't allowed as a video communication. RAW is a data communication, so think in RAW over HDMI, think of HDMI as literally just an incredibly high bandwidth data connection. So I'm not sure the feasibility of it. I can ask again. I doubt that's going to be something that I'd be able to let you know. Please add the option to turn on or off subject detection while recording. I'll have to look into that one. If camera is set to mic input power plug and connected to a Zoom H1N that has line input, would it damage the camera's internal preamps and phantom power too? It shouldn't damage them. Probably should try to build into a habit of, like, if you know you're going to use that, set it to line level. It shouldn't damage anything. Phantom power over the 3.5 isn't really a ton of power, so. Video tech. Can we get an OpenGate format that allows hybrid zoom? Doesn't have to be max res. It would be... There are some challenges to doing something like that. So as it sits right now, all of our OpenGate modes, or vast majority of them, originate from the full sensor's height or the Super 35 height. And then are downsampled to the resolutions they need. What that means is that anything that's going to be an open gate for full sensor area, you can't use a hybrid zoom because you have nothing to crop down into, or the processing to do an on-the-fly downscaling would be probably well beyond what cameras can do. Same would be for the Super 35 regions, because you're starting from a Super 35. Like, I think there is, which option is it? It is the, so on the S1R Mark II, we have a, what is this? This is a 4.7K, which is from a Super 35 region. That gets us the 60 frames per second because you're at Super 35 height, so you can do faster frame rates. You've got everything up to 60. Those are originating from that Super 35 area, so you don't have anything to downsample from. You are basically working at the best resolution that you can within it. Does it mean that it would always stay like that? Not necessarily. Just as of right now, I don't think necessarily the hardware's overall set to really be able to do all that stuff. Thank you for the version 1.4 update on the S1R Mark II. I can record 8.1K 3x2 open gate to my 2TB SSD for hours. So cool, pun intended. Yes. I think if you were over on the Discord channel, we had a huge conversation about that kind of stuff. Yeah. Speaking of Discord, because y'all are here, and there's 117 of you, at least is what I can see here. This is probably the perfect opportunity to share something interesting with you. So any of you that are looking for last-minute opportunities or last-minute buys before the end of the year, we were able to put together a little bit of something additional on top of like what kind of promotions you see already from us online. And we wanted to make sure that that's something that we can share to all of you. So if you've read the description below, you'll see that there is a link to our Shop Panasonic website. This is for US customers only, unfortunately. For those of you that are international, I apologize. But this is for US based customers that want to take advantage of, maybe some last minute savings on, primarily S lenses, a couple cameras in there too. But if you click on that link in the description, head over to the website and enter the code that you see right here, Holiday 5, you're going to be getting an extra little bit of a something on top there for any of those last minute purchases. You'll see a bunch of different S series lenses are all on sale there. So if you've been waiting, if you wanted to get that little bit extra on top of what we're running currently for the holidays, you can head over to shop.panasonic.com or honestly click the link down in the description. We've got the code right there. It's an exclusive code for those of you that view and support LUMIX Live and that have joined us over on the Discord platform. So yes, you'll have advantage. You can take advantage of this through, I forget what the end date is. It's on the website. But remember to put Holiday 5 in the coupon section when you are going to be checking out. Get yourself a little bit of an extra discount on top of what we're doing already. So yeah, once again, link down in the description. Use the QR code or the code Holiday 5 caps to get a little bit of an extra deal at the end of the year. So now that that's said, and it is time limited on that one. So now that we've gone through that part, more comments. No update on the Tether disable auto review. Lumix should clearly state that Prores RAW requires a corrective LUT to achieve accurate colors and remove the magenta tint. Not necessarily. RAW requires editing of some sort. We encode or we flag it as vlog vgamut. Your mileage may vary. Understand that a direct LUT is never going to be a one-stop shop for color grading. I don't know of any camera that you don't have to do some sort of correction, like color correction, if you're trying to be fully color accurate. Because every camera company and every output is always going to have a little bit of a shift some other way. But thanks for the comment. Rhett says, I'll be making a feature wish list for the GH7 soon in case y'all are taking suggestions. I feel like there's one more firmware to squeeze out of that thing. It would be cool. The LUT is available on Panasonic website, but many YouTubers compare Prores RAW to other formats without applying this correction. I look at... I understand where you're coming from, but maybe also look at the fact that most people that I've ever worked with that do color correction aren't going to be using the built-in cameras conversion LUT. They'll use them as kind of starting point, and then you're going to do a correction to it. So, what is your take on claiming a particularly high photographic dynamic range that relies on forced baked noise reduction to RAW files? It's still too early for me to have an opinion on that one yet. Let me see some results, and we'll get back to you on that one, DJ. I'll be sending my parfocal lens, my parfocal test to you soon as well for the 10 to 25, 2050. Seems to be parfocal on GH6, not GH7. Yeah, I would be curious to take a look at that. Hey Sean, have mentioned before, but would love to see OpenGate ProRes RAW on the GH7, specifically anamorphic filming really takes a hit when you're with only being able to do 420. EH films. I agree. I would love to see an OpenGate option in our cameras that's ProRes or ProRes RAW. I don't know if it's something that's ever going to come to the cameras. I don't know enough about the background as far as that goes. What I do know about at most is that, and I know you're incredibly experienced with it as well, is that our 420 tends to, kind of be top of the line, very similar to some of the capabilities that others strive for. But it doesn't mean that we're not, constantly pushing to try to get that kind of stuff added in the future. Set a custom frame marker on my G9 Mark II that approximates 65 by 24 aspect ratio. Is there currently a way to get the 65 by 24 JPEG in camera? No, unfortunately not. I actually just had a conversation about this with some of the others on my team. Yeah. Almost caught up on the chats here. For the new auto ISO feature in the new update, is there any chance that we can change back to manual ISO? It can lock to the current auto ISO value instead of the original for smooth transit. I can ask. I don't think that's going to be something that gets added though, Rhett. The reason it got added was because of the fact that we had a bunch of people that had requested for very specific use cases. I may need to jump to auto, but I want to be able to click back. The most common conversation we had about adding that was around I am capturing my video at the native ISOs, but there are sometimes those one or two little drop-in shots where I need to be able to jump to auto because I just want it to pick the ISO, since you can limit it. And in those cases, their request was when it's turned off, it goes back to what my native ISO was, because then you create the reverse problem of I jumped to auto ISO to get an exposure that I need quickly. I flipped it off auto ISO because I want to go back to what I had set beforehand. Yeah. This is a good one. Any insight you may be willing to share on your experiences with LUMIX batteries when it comes to ideal battery charging practices, and how to get the batteries to last for years? They are lithium batteries, so pretty typical care that you want to take for lithium batteries. Personally, I don't leave batteries charged at full charge, and I don't let them run completely down. I rarely will get to a point where I let a battery go completely dead in the camera. The second I usually have the second I get like 1 bar on the readout for the battery life, I'm changing the battery. putting it into a charger. I'll let it go to full charge, and then I take it off the charger, and if I start using it, it's good. I'll tell you, I've got even BL, what was it? I got 19s, the original GH5 battery. I've got batteries in my kit from that were pre the camera even being available to the public, that are still going strong. I've got BLJ batteries from the original S1 series that are still going strong. Those are, heck, almost a decade old at this point for some of those batteries, and they're still working fine. I would say with most batteries in general, first party or genuine batteries, you're probably going to get a much better expected longevity out of the battery life. Third party, it's open to a lot more variables. You don't really know what their BMS is in the batteries. You don't know what kind of cells they use, what their longevity ratings are, stuff like that. But in general, yeah, never let the batteries go completely dead. Don't store batteries dead. If you've got the ability to kind of cycle through your batteries, if you have a couple of them, rotate them. I number my batteries, so I know, like, hey, say I've got 10 batteries, I mark it 1 through 10, and I just kind of rotate them as I'm using them, so that none of them are ever just kind of sitting stagnant. The longer they sit with no use, the shorter their lifespan will be. Agree, the filtering is awesome. Took me 5 minutes to set up my list on my S1II, which is what I referenced in my shortcut button to switch frame rates. Yes, yeah. MP4 Lite 60 would be good to have. We got another vote for there. I like this one. Video Photech. It's not overblown, talking about OpenGate. It's not overblown because when I ask which aspect my client needs, their answer is now yes. Yeah. I love OpenGate, especially for anamorphic use. One of the significant reasons I use LUMIX hardware since the S5 Mark II. Yeah. So going back to like the OpenGate conversation in general, yes, OpenGate has a ton of benefits. And if you are someone who came from or views it from a purely cinematic perspective with anamorphic lenses, yeah, you've got tons of benefits. You've got 1.6x lenses, you got 1.8s, 1.5s, you've got 1.33s. They all give you different looks. Yes, they're all designed for different sensors and different kinds of ratios and different looks in the background and different character. So why not have that as something that is a benefit for you? Why not have that just as an option? That's what we've always, kind of viewed it as. Yes, anamorphic has gotten way more cost effective. When we were first doing OpenGate recording with the GH5 series, it was like unobtainium for the vast majority of people, or you had to go with some really sketchy, cheapo lenses. Most of those companies have either gone, but a couple of them are now making some really dang good lenses for really inexpensive, and they're expanding into full frame. So the market has just changed in what should be made available. We've always been about democratizing filmmaking and photography to as many people as possible. So yeah, we've got it. We've had it for many years. Like I said, I believe, I've double-checked this, I think we are the first in the mirrorless category to actually be offering a proper OpenGate 3x2 or a 4x3 ratio. And I know that we're the first with 60p in that option for it. But this kind of also brings, again, we've been talking about OpenGate very much from a professional's standpoint, or someone that is going to be delivering content somewhere. Whether that is, I have clients, and again, I encourage you to watch Cam's video that he posted last night. Proof's in the pudding there, how content is delivered. If you're someone who is, living in the more social side of the world, where you like being able to deliver on social platforms, or I like being able to deliver more traditional platforms, yeah, who doesn't want the better flexibility with it? I don't think anyone disagrees, and this is something that I would say across the board. You watch all the different takes out there on OpenGate. I have not heard a single person at all that said, no, it would be terrible to put that in a camera. No one has said that. The closest you get is, I don't want to see it added if it breaks something. And Gerald's completely true. Don't put stuff in a camera if it's going to break things. 100%. I agree with him there. But you do have that kind of point where, you know, if this is what the market's done, if we've been leading this into the market, you've got a capability that adds true benefit, doesn't take anything away, well, you've got a home within our system. You've got all the capabilities. We're the longest running doing it. We have the most tools available to assist how you want to use the product. And to talk about that, like with actual tools, you know, filming in 3x2, fine. But, you know, you get the idea of, I read one of the comments was like, you know, some people say like, you know, if I film, actually, I think this was something that Vu had mentioned, you know, filming in OpenGate is lazy. You know, you're going to shoot once, edit later. Well, not necessarily, because we have these things in our cameras called frame markers that allow us to be able to come in and say, hey, I know where my 16:9 crop is going to go. So say I want to be able to take this 16:9 frame and I want to move it so that my OG S1 series and my S1II are right here. I can move and say, hey, without having to move my tripod, I've got one framing set up here for that. I've got a 9x16 that I'm going to want to be able to keep in mind with, you know, to highlight maybe my S9 perched on top of my 24-70 up here. And then I want to be able to take a 4x3 and I want to be able to kind of get in here with my S5 Mark II. Now, the cool thing about this is I'm shooting in 8K on my S1R Mark II. So now I've got 3 completely different shots that were all captured in one. That's one way to take a look at it. The more, I think, common way that a lot of us have been thinking here is if I do some resets to this. Let's change these aspect ratios all back. And then I want to go and reset this one. The more common way to think about this is I'm filming for a client. I'm going to be doing, say, testimonial content. This is probably one of the more common use cases. I'm doing testimonial content. I got my 16:9. That's my, you know, that's what's going to run on the website. I want a vertical. I got my 9x16 or my 4x3 or 4x5, depending on if it's going to be a story or if it's going to be a feed post. I've got all of those. I can frame set up the way I want it. So if I know that the way I want to set my shot up is I would need a lot more room for my vertical delivery, well, I can move my 16:9 down to the bottom. I can frame in so that my subject's head gives me enough headroom here if I need headroom, or I can frame to the top if I know I don't need headroom but I need width or side for copy or graphics. But now I've just extended how much more headroom I have. It's one of the things that I think people, when they first look at OpenGate, you think everything has to be, or it's assumed everything is filmed dead center. That you're going to take a center 16:9 and the center 9x16. Without realizing that I can slide my frame down, frame on the lower half of that, and build even more headroom. So now it's an even bigger change. It's not 2 small slivers top and bottom, it's one bigger sliver up top that's getting me more room. But now, how does this relate to general use cases, right? Someone who's not working. Someone who's an average person that's going to go out there, that's going to, you know, walk into a typical electronics store to pick up a camera. Well, the fact of the matter is that everything that we talk about in the industry, in this side of the industry, the working side or the tech heavy or the gearhead side, our conversations propagate further than we think. The conversations about OpenGate, if, you know, all of a sudden there's a ton of talk about it on YouTube and it's tied with, you know, we're talking about sports photography, right? Or sports videography, or I'm talking about wedding videography. And in a bunch of wedding videography or wedding content that's on YouTube or in a social space, there is also the open gate conversation happening. Those two paths start to cross, which means people that start to look for wedding photographer or wedding videographer now we'll start seeing content of wedding videographer and an open gate message, or conversations about camera and tech and all of that. That's how algorithms work. They start linking together. If that person really likes or even has an inkling into tech, they may click on that video, and now all of a sudden they're down a rabbit hole. They start seeing this more. We live in a world where the average consumer is way more educated than we ever have been in the past. The vast majority of us know enough or know more now about cameras and technology and hardware and photography and videography than we did even remotely 10 years ago. So to blanket right off and say, well, the average person, it's not going to make any difference to them, is probably one of the most misguided takes, I think, that's out there. The average person that is out there buying, they're buying cell phones, they're buying computers, they're listening to whatever interests them, right? Tech, like, may not even be tech, maybe outdoors, wildlife, maybe hiking and camping and all that kind of stuff. They may be watching their TV. They know what resolutions and size and all that stuff is from a television. So an average person will see certain capabilities, and they'll see stuff like OpenGate. They'll see the messaging. They will see what it is that people like all of you create, because we're curious by nature. If we don't know something, vast majority of people will search it. They'll, do a quick Google search on a term if you don't know it. If you don't know what a LUT is, type LUT into Google or Gemini or whatever it is that you want to use, although I don't trust using the AI for stuff like that if you're trying to learn legitimate information about things. You do a search and you get fed a bunch of information that kind of points you in a direction. People, in general, I have learned, people love to learn things just kind of in their own way, especially with how it relates to their interests. So you start talking about a family or could even be single. Anyone that likes to share content or share stuff with friends and family. I make no money doing it. I just like being able to capture a video or photos and share them to my friends and family. Well, I go back to the phones. If I'm sharing stuff on Instagram, Reels and Stories are still way more popular than feeds, than photos or 4:3 or 5:4 or whatever aspect ratio you're thinking about there. So those people are going to want to be able to post within that format. As people are more educated and people's desires for the equipment that they purchase or the cameras that they purchase, if they're even looking at buying a camera, they are already one step above where someone with no knowledge of cameras at all has. They're going to have an interest and they're going to want to see, like, well, I heard about this term. Does this camera have it? Well, when your camera has it, that's a benefit. We start looking at, mobile devices, the newest iPhones that have an open gate recording. There's a reason why it's there. You get the reframing capability. I get the ability to load for social. I get the ability to, have a wider picture. But more importantly, this is about users that may have no interest in this at all. I mentioned at the beginning, I am a photographer first and foremost, and Cam makes this point beautifully in his video. As photographers, we've shot 3:2 aspect ratio for decades. Decades upon decades. 3:2 has been, for the most part, the most common aspect ratio captured for photography. Now, was that because 4:6 prints, which came later on, were more commonly available? Sure. But what does shooting in 3:2 aspect ratio or even 4:3 in micro four thirds, what does that get you in photography? Cropping, reframing, moving the pixels around, or the film around if you're going back far enough. Being able to compose. Being able to capture the image and figure your composition out potentially later. It's a bigger skill to be able to get it right in camera, right out of the box, without the need to recrop or reframe or do any of that stuff later. That's an art and a skill on its own. But the vast majority of us want to be able to capture, and we like to tinker, we like to shift and move, and things need to be pliable. Look at the arguments online. How pliable are RAW files? We had the question here about what do I think about, forced built-in noise reduction in a RAW file versus not having it. These are the conversations we have. We're comfortable applying that logic to the photography side, but we're not comfortable applying that logic to the video side. The reality is, in video, this is what the future is. The future is being able to take your camera, record in whatever aspect ratio you want to be able to record in. Be able to say, hey, my client needs 16:9. Cool. I know I'm delivering 16:9. I'll shoot it in OpenGate. Because, hey, if you got a bouncy client, or if you got someone like me who tipped the camera down too far and I'm sitting too far up in my chair, I'm now cutting part of my head off. Well, I can reframe that. I don't have to redo the take. If I'm a casual user, I've never used, cameras before, I got a safety net. I can record like this, and hey, if I'm not the most comfortable with my camera movements, if I don't, if I'm learning into this category and I need to be able to follow a subject, say I really like skateboarding and BMX or motorcycle or anything like that, photography and videography, well, I can be panning, I can work with that person. If I'm shooting in 16:9 and that person goes out of frame, well, guess what? They're out of frame, they're gone. If I shoot in OpenGate, well, in post, I have the ability to fix it. If I don't know how to, I'm sure now a lot of the tools are way easier to learn to be able to say, hey, I need to take this frame and for like a little bit, I need to slide the frame up so I stay with the person. I need to slide back down so that they're all framed properly. This is what OpenGate affords you within the lineup. This is why we've been doing it for years within our lineups. This is why we make it such a big point within our cameras. It's not that everybody needs it. It's that if you've got the ability to do it and you have a safety net and it makes your creative life easier, whether it's professional because I'm getting paid for it or I just enjoy taking photos and videos, that's a positive. That's a good thing. We've done it in photography. We can do it in video now too. Let's take some of the more questions, or comments, or things that came in. On that over or underexposed topic, my workflow changed from the S5IIX to the S1R2. I feel that underexposing the S1R2 is better because it retains more shadow than highlights. Not necessarily. I think it's Luis or Lewis. If you use the tools that you have available to you in the camera, luminance spot meter, the false color, that's the one. You'll see that, like, if you turn dynamic range expansion on or DR boost on, you'll see that you get the highlight is where the addition in dynamic range is. In general, if you are looking to get the maximum amount of dynamic range available, you're going to want to shoot as bright as you can to fill the shadow information with as much light as you can. Obviously within reason, to get your general image. The difference that you're probably seeing from the S5IIX to the S1R2 is, one, they're very different sensors. The S1R2 has, in general, it does just have kind of a special sauce about it in its capabilities, its tonal rendering, its dynamic range. It has more dynamic range, well, when you have the DR expansion on. So, yeah, truth of the matter is, honestly, whatever works for you the best. If you are liking the footage you get out of it with an underexpose push versus an overexpose push, that's great. I'm sure your clients love your content, or if you don't have clients, I'm sure you like your content, and others probably do too. So someone like myself or anyone else on YouTube that's going to come out here and say, well, this is how you have to do it, I think we all understand that that's probably not a good take these days. Is, don't necessarily listen to what people say online to say you have to do it this way, because believe me, I made it through my art school by constantly going back with my professors being like, well, why do I have to do certain things that way? I like it this way and other people do. I wasn't the greatest of students. where did we go? Thank you, YouTube. Jumping tons of comments down. I missed a lot of questions here. I went on too many rants on this stream. Sorry, y'all. Jeez, how many questions did I miss? Okay, this one's way back. The average person doesn't own a 3K digital interchangeable lens camera. You'd be surprised. You would be very surprised what the average person is spending, depending on where you are in the world. That's another one of those things. It depends on where you are in the world. It depends on time of year. It depends on what different areas of a consumer you're looking for, or an average person. But yes, people. There's a lot more people than professionals buying $3,000 cameras. A lot more. Would love a feature to turn on and off focus peaking zebra stripes while recording. I'll have to look into that stuff, William. Would love an XLR adapter that provides all 4 channels as XLR. Music video frequently benefit from more than just 2 XLR. Yeah, that would be an interesting move. Okay. I upgraded LUMIX Tether to 2.12 on Windows. The wired USB connection isn't detected, so the program won't start. My G9 Mark II USB setting appears to be correct. It did work with 2.11. Any ideas? Could try uninstalling and reinstalling LUMIX Tether on your computer. I think I'm running 2.12 as well, and it seems to be fine. Double check and make sure that your G9 Mark II is firmware updated. I typically will always keep the USB settings to prompt, so it'll ask me what connection I want, and then I go from there. But I would try uninstalling and reinstalling, making sure that there's no issues with the install on Windows, and make sure that the USB port is active. I have run into situations before where a USB port on my computer, because I plugged in a 2.0 device, it locked that port to 2.0. So I had to do a restart, and that cleared it out. Those are things that could have happened. There was a problem with XLR2 modules that did high-pass filter, essentially cutting all the bass. Is that fixed? I have not heard of that comment or that situation. I'll check with the service team. Although there are many benefits, to higher resolutions. I hope LUMIX will always remember that excellence in 1080p remains a popular feature. It does, but so straight 1080p recording in the cameras, yes, there is still definitely a benefit and a value there. That's why we still include it in the cameras. But the fact is, the vast majority of capture resolution has moved on. Yes, there's a number of areas and regions and use cases where 1080 is still perfectly fine. That's exactly why we still have it in the cameras. But I will say, if 1080p is what you need for delivery, it is probably still, especially if you're in the working side of the industry, it is a smarter move to record 4K and then downsample or export in 1080 and maintain the 4K, because of what a lot of others have been kind of mentioning as well. There is we've talked about this before, there is a whole thing about, if we talk TV and movies, primarily TV, this whole thing of syndication of television shows. As there was the shift to digital or digital capture in TV, you went from TV shows that were being recorded on film that had the ability to be output for basically whatever resolution they were able to at the time to scan it and, remaster it for that time's delivery. That's why if you look now, you see reruns of Seinfeld. Only until very recently have you started seeing reruns of shows that were shot digitally or shot in, 3CCD, studio cameras. And that's because, upscaling technologies have gotten better, but they still don't look as good. The same thing applies for a lot of just general use cases where, hey, sure, 1080p works for some people right now, but in 2 years, in a year, if you're a business where you have, time that you have to keep footage on hand, storage of 4K footage isn't really that much larger than 1080p footage anymore, because you're more driven by bitrate and, overall. Yes, it's more, but costs of storage have come down. It is typically just a better practice to record the higher resolution, maintain it, and export out to what you want. Because now, as a business, I also have the ability to go to that client and say, hey, I know you only asked for 1080, but, with the advent of, way more affordable 4K televisions, 4K computer monitors, our phones that have higher resolution, I can output you a higher res version for X number of dollars. It's a little bit more than maybe whatever. That's a more, I'd say, savvy business approach to why you would want to record at a higher frame rate or a higher resolution. But we do understand the 1080p remaining, in the cameras. Would love some AF anamorphic lenses. I see some entering the market from other lens makers. Yes, there are. You're probably not able to answer this, but is Panasonic Lumix looking into making cinema lenses, L-mount or MFT? Additionally, more high-quality adapters for MFT would be appreciated. We don't make adapters. We make hybrid lenses. So I have no idea if we'd ever get into cinema lenses. We add a bunch of things that cinematographers or cinema lenses are known for. So limited focus breathing done optically, electronically parfocal, because mechanically parfocal is still a very cost prohibitive and size and weight prohibitive thing. So we carry a lot of that stuff in our lenses. But as William pointed out, there are things like AF anamorphic lenses coming out. Like Sur makes a full frame AF anamorphic lens. I'm shooting on a Sur Super 35 anamorphic lens right now. When I zoom in, okay, hi Sean. When I zoom with my S1II in the LUMIX 24-105, I see the exposure change on the display monitor. Backlighting +1, and I can hear the aperture clicking when I'm not recording. It is normal. Zoom lenses, even with a fixed aperture, the aperture has to adjust properly to where the focal length of the lens is. Double check that you're actually seeing the exposure change. The exposure might not actually be changing. It's the preview of the exposure, but it can also depend on what exposure mode you're in. Will the S1II ever have open gate in 3840 by 2560? 3840 by 2560. What would that What is that aspect ratio? So the S1 Mark II has MP4 Lite. MP4 Lite is 3840 by 2560. It has that. It's the MP4 Lite mode. So that would be a 3x2. It's at 30 frames per second in the camera. So we have it. Geo San Pedro. It is. Make sure you're up to date on the latest firmware. I have 4 LUMIX Pro bodies looking to get the S1R2 now and eagerly awaiting the launch of... Oh. Believe me, if we had anything to talk about, I would love to talk about stuff, but no clue. Does the Atomos TX work with the S1II? Not sure. Not familiar with the Atomos TX. Hey, is there a USB-C tether to iPad for the S5 II? I'm going to do volume shooting, and I was thinking of asking on here. It's an extra. I'm ready to take photos regardless. I'm not super sure. I know you can't... Well, no, because it's with the S1II Series. The S1II Series, you can use Capture One on an iPad, and you can tether into it, but not on the S5 II Series. How do y'all handle having the camera do everything under the sun and give us the most amount of options? Serious question. It's just a brand ethos. We've always set out for a very long time. We set out to change what the kind of status quo was for mirrorless cameras or just interchangeable lens cameras. I mean, we entered the modern imaging industry by creating the mirrorless category with G1. You know, a lot of people like to give the first mirrorless camera hat to a competitor of ours, but it's not true. We were the first that actually ever introduced mirrorless, so that was our entry into the higher end segment of this. But remember, we've been making imaging type cameras since the 60s, I think it was the 60s. So our goal has always been, we want to make things more accessible, and gatekeeping features, or, you know, saying like, hey, you know, even when we had the Vericam and the Evil 1, we still added major video functionality into the LUMIX series. So, you know, that whole kind of, you know, you have a higher end cinema product and then you don't, and, you know, all that kind of stuff, and like with your consumer line, we've always had better capabilities in our cameras than most out there. And video is just one of those areas where, you know, look, photographers, as much as I hate to say this even for myself, yes, there are improvements that can be made in photography, but they're a lot more nuanced for photography, way more niche than they are in the video side. So, yeah. So yeah, like, we handle it by a lot of very informed members of our team globally that work with creators, that talk to filmmakers and photographers, and, you know, try to understand what it is that you want, what people want. And we don't try to come out and say, well, you need this, or, you know, we have this and this is what you should be using. We think that, you know, that's just how the market and how the industry is going to grow, is that you guys are able to voice an opinion. That's why we do this stream. That's why we do a lot of the kind of direct outreach that we do, is that your voices are what matter the most. Your voices, your input are what get things done. The last couple of firmware updates that we've done into the cameras, features that are added come from you. The change in the UI for the autofocusing, so going to a box instead of the crosshair, adding the auto ISO capability switch, stuff like that. MP4 Lite came from end users. LUT use cases came from end users. A lot of this stuff comes from situations that you've shared with us, with struggles that you've shared with us, with things that you would like to see, that allows our engineers to get creative and say, well, you know, yeah, we can solve that issue. They may not always be the most headlined things that get added into the products, but that's how we deal with it. That's how we handle getting everything we can, as much as we can, to everybody in our products. Did you see Open Battle, one battle after another shot in VistaVision, which is basically native 3:2 ratio, which could just be a creative look, final look? I have not. Is there any way Bluetooth to Bluetooth Magic LUT file from LUMIX Lab? Not Bluetooth it. So when you use Magic LUT to create a LUT in the camera, you can share that look. You can email it, you can airdrop it, stuff like that. So you can get it out of Lab. You just have to click on the LUT. Click on the edit. The image that you have created the LUT on with a reference image. Instead of exporting the image out, you want to save the look. Once the look is saved, it'll save it as a LUT. You can then export that LUT from the LUT page. Any big plans for CES or NAB? No idea. I'm probably not going to CES this year. This will be the first year in a number of years that I'm not going, which is nice because I'm tired of some of the trade shows. It's a lot of time away from home. How about recording OpenGate with proxies? We have asked that one a lot, actually. That custom framing, I'd never even thought of that. Well worth watching today just for that specific nugget of info. Yeah, custom framing. It's so, you know, kind of absurd in certain cases. But if I'm doing like product videography, or if I'm doing like multi-person talking heads content, you shoot in an OpenGate and be able to say like, hey, I want a 16:9 here, 9:16 over there, however it is that I want to go. So yeah. Let's see here. Let's see, I got one. Okay. I got one in here. So Cam sent me a text because it was in the chat and I think I missed it. Is there a difference on the 3x2 420 compared to other brands? Yes, we do 420 and we do 3x2 aspect ratio, where, to my knowledge, there's only one other one in the full frame category that does it, and it has to be RAW or, you know, their own version. Snarky response aside, one of the things to remember with, like, you know, 420, 422, the way video content is encoded. If you've ever, I used this analogy actually in a conversation I had, I think it was actually yesterday, so think of what we are doing to generate our HEVC footage. So that's our 420 10-bit. Think of it as, the vast majority of you probably had an experience where you take a downloaded or a lower quality video clip, right? I take a out of the box H.265 recorded straight off a camera, put into an editor, do my edits to it, and then I export it back out as H.265. Unless you cram it with bitrate, you're probably going to notice that you're going to get a degraded image compared to what was original. You know, and this is assuming you're not shooting in log, right? So we're just doing quality levels here. If you start with the equivalent of here, and your goal is to export here, it doesn't necessarily work. You want to start as high quality as you can to then give you the headroom to export out whatever below it is that you want. So in the video recording world, think of it as, I'm recording RAW, I'm recording ProRes and all the different flavors, H.265, H.264, AVC HD, you know, so on and so forth. All the different kind of formats. With our setup, we record from as high of a quality as we can to give us the best output that we can. So if I'm going to correlate this to things that you or I do every day, I would rather work with a source piece of footage that's raw to export out an H.265 video for YouTube than work with an H.265 to export out an H.265 for YouTube. I know that doesn't necessarily make as much sense because we record H.265, but think of the exporting process that we do for our projects on our computer as a similar concept as to how the cameras generate what the output is from the cameras. If you are getting an H.265 piece of footage on the camera, it's being generated from something. It's being generated from some depth, some, bit rate of footage out there, of what's coming off the sensor. The higher control, the higher power, the better quality that you can do from that, the better control you have over generating H.265, H.264, back in the day, AVC HD, ProRes RAW, 422, 422HQ, whatever codec you want. The better main file or main source content that you can create from, the better the end results will be, especially if you've got as much experience in the industry as we have at very different you know, kind of compressions and outputs and all that kind of stuff from all of our different video functionality. So when you see people, so Cam did another video looking at our H.265 compression out of the S1 Mark II. I know Connor and Cam did one a long time ago when we first launched these cameras. I think it was with the S1R Mark II. There are examples out there that show you, for anyone that's concerned about, well, you know, I want to shoot open gate with the LUMIX cameras, but it's only 420 10-bit. Take a look at some of the content and the comparisons that people have done. There's a lot there. The quality is much better than you're probably accustomed to seeing in other examples of H.265. I got time for one more question, and then I have to actually jump. I didn't realize that we're already 20 after. But I do want to address this one. This is Papadario. I think LUMIX is kind of forgetting the photography side of the camera. Few improvements on photography side. Tether app does not change for years. S1II still not being supported by Capture One. Those are great comments, because you're actually giving me something that is important to you. So the Tether app doesn't change. You're right. LUMIX Tether hasn't changed. LUMIX Tether was a program built from the video perspective first, to be fully transparent with you. It was built to be able to control our cameras in a video sense. Yes, you've got video functionality. You're right. LUMIX Tether, probably not my first choice for photography capture. The S5 Mark II not being supported in Capture One, though. That one, Capture One is shown, and y'all can see, the S1 Mark II, it works. It can be done. Capture One has the information. It's not always the camera brand's fault that things aren't necessarily working in software. Sometimes the software doesn't want to add support. Sometimes the software companies need to hear from users themselves that there is a need or a desire for that feature to be added for them to justify adding it to their portfolio. Adding a camera or adding a feature to anything doesn't come cheap. It's not free. What I mean by that sense is the team at Capture One, if they wanted to add an S5 Mark II to it because, you know, y'all were really excited about it and you really want it and you really let them know about it, they have to determine, can we put resources behind this? Is there enough justification? Are enough of you going to pay for the license to do it? In some cases, that's just up to the company that owns the software as to whether or not they want to do it. With the S1 Mark II series and the complete relaunch of the S1 line, we were able to work. We got that worked out. We had communications with Capture One. We worked with them to make sure that everything was working, that you had all the controls and all that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, we do have our control protocols for USB made available in an SDK that any company can use within what the agreements are when you download it. So we're not forgetting about photography at all. The two particular cases, I can see the perspective on the Tether app. 100%, totally agree. I think our Tether app needs improvement for photographers. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not, because that's not what that app was originally really designed for. The Capture One side, communicate it to Capture One. Hound Capture One, let them know that, hey, if you've got an S5II and you want to shoot, tethered and that's your program of choice, the more you let a company know, legitimately let them know with reason, like, hey, I use this is why I would love to have this capability, this is what I need. The more information a company has to actually then act on what it is that you're asking from them. The follow-up was autofocus for stills, but CAF still needs improvement too. Define improvement. I will say this again, I know it sounds snarky, but define improvement. Just saying it needs to improve doesn't mean anything. If we want to have productive and constructive conversations about, hey, you want to see something improve, you want to see, changes made, describe those changes. Let us know. That's why we do these streams. Put your comment in the comments after this video. What is it that you want to see changed? What doesn't work for the autofocus system for you? Describe it. Detail out to us, because just saying something needs to improve, what needs to improve? At that point, we don't know. I can't read your mind. I can't read anybody else's mind. Is what is not working for you as a user. The more you can articulate those things, the more chance you have of a company being able to look at it and say, hey, okay, we understand your use case matches with this use case, matches with this use case. We can then draw lines and say, okay, this is what would link to making that perform better in your particular case. But if we're left guessing, if any brand is left guessing, they're not going to know. And it doesn't help to just say, we'll make it like X, Y, or Z brand's autofocus. That helps even less. Companies don't know how other companies do things. So, let's see here. I can do one more. Let me catch way up here. All right. It's a lot of people asking about future stuff that I cannot answer. Even if I did know answers, I couldn't answer. I would love to see 444 12-bit on a GH7. Is that possible? Probably not. I don't know of any compact-ish camera that has 444 ProRes. I removed the camera USB device from Windows and let it rediscover the camera again. Fixed it. Awesome. Okay, cool. That's good to know. Okay, I caught up to Cam's question. I answered that one. Okay. All right. Okay. So, that's probably all we're going to cover for today. I do want to remind those of you, though, since you're still here, if you were looking to make a last-minute purchase, especially on things like lenses for the S series, if you go to the link down in the description and use the code HOLIDAY5, you get a little bit of an extra discount, specifically for those of you here on the stream and those of you over in Discord. That's our little kind of just end of the year. Got a little bit of something extra we can do for y'all. So I encourage you to take a look at that. Use that code. It's only going to be available for a short time. When the promotion's over, this part of the video will disappear along with the other one that I created while we were talking about the holiday promos there. Again, links down in the description for the products that are eligible for it. It's a lot of lenses, some of the cameras as well. But remember, it's code HOLIDAY5 in the checkout. So with that, thank you, everybody, so much for jumping in, joining the conversation, keeping it civil. The open gate situation, there's a lot. There's a lot of, I think, in general, people really love to get behind their brand, their product. That's cool. With us, we've always wanted to be as welcoming as we can be to anybody that has an interest in wanting to capture whatever it is that you use these cameras for. Whether that is your social media content creation, whether if that's, you're a TikTok creator, you're a working wedding, an event videographer, whether you're a professional photographer, landscape, portrait, whatever it is, you've got the you've got the capabilities in our products to do all of it. Doesn't take away from anything, doesn't break anything. You have full flexibility with it. If you don't ever want to use video, you never have to. We've even changed the menu designs on the S1II series for that part. So I encourage you, if you've never looked at OpenGate, which I kind of bet a lot of you probably have, but if you've never looked at using OpenGate or tried it, give it a shot. Think a little outside of the box. You know, it may not be something that makes an impact for you. You may have clients, or your type of work may never require you to do vertical content, and that's great. We love being able to say that OpenGate gives me the quick ability for vertical content. But the reality is that OpenGate also gives me more flexibility for horizontal content. It lets me reframe. It lets me slide up and down. It lets me adjust mistakes. It gives you a little more flexibility. So if you've never tried it before, if you have a friend or you've got the ability to try one of our cameras with it, I encourage you to try it. Does that mean you're going to switch out of a system 100% for one little feature like OpenGate? Maybe, maybe not. But there may be those particular jobs or those particular situations where you may actually find a benefit, and it would be beneficial to have that in a kit with you, especially if you're in a business side. So with that said, I really am done for today. Thank you, everybody, for the comments, for hanging around with me, for chatting, for asking some awesome questions, for keeping the conversation civil. If you want to keep these conversations going, check out our Discord. The link is down in the description. You can join us over there. We have lots of back and forth. I see Cliff's here. Hi, Cliff. We have lots of conversations over there. You can reach me over on Discord throughout the week as well. What else? Obviously, check us out on Instagram, all those other platforms. We will have one more LUMIX Live this month. So we will have our next stream next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. That'll be the last one for 2025 before we get into 2026. I will not have a stream on January 1st for obvious reasons. But I will schedule one for January 2nd. So we'll be live next Thursday at 2 p.m. We'll take basically 2 weeks, and then we'll be live on January 2nd in the new year, and we'll kick off the new year with, I don't know, more conversations, more cool stuff to talk about. I'm sure there will be something that we all want to chat about, because the internet loves giving all of us reasons to sit and go on and on about all kinds of different stuff. So, other than that, I hope you all have a great day. I hope you get out there, you create some cool stuff. If you don't have the chance to join us next week, I hope you have a great holiday season if you celebrate. Be safe, all the kind of fun stuff. And yeah, I will see you all next Thursday, 2 p.m. right here on LUMIX Live. Later.